going on, everybody? Sir Stacks here. Welcome to Wednesday edition of Vibecoding Summer Camp. Shout outs to every builder that has been showing up every day and learning something new, because vibe coding, it's new and there's a lot of nuances. And I, as myself, as a builder, I'm always learning something new. So I think, if you're seeing this, make sure you tap in, come through. We do have the camp live and direct, and it's a lot of builders just building cool stuff. Remember, you're not only building for yourself, but you're building for an ecosystem. So that's what makes this really, really, really special. I'm building, I'm continuously building. It's funny, I was just talking to Slava and letting him know that, I'm building something that I built like 2 months ago, rebuilding it again so I can launch it on the base app. So for the builders, for the trenchers, come through, learn something, and build, right? This is the opportunity to actually leverage these tools to build something dope, something sustainable, right? We always talk about, when dev will cook. You are the dev now, especially with all these tools. So come through, build, and chill. Let's get it. So today we'll be going through prompting framework. And the last class on Monday, we learned about user persona, user stories, how to leverage that and inputting that into our apps, right? But now we need a framework, right? We need something to really tie all of this in together, to really start building out your MVPs. I'm pretty sure you guys are building your MVPs already. If not, cool, it's okay. We still have a little bit of time. But the point is to like get you in that framework of now, how do we put all of this together in a way where the AI understands it and is able to translate that into task, and your output is not over engineered. So I think that's one of the huge problems that a lot of builders have, is that they tend to over engineer their features. So with that being said, prompt and framework, let's get into it. So the COCI framework. So this is something that I use a lot, and that is context, output, constraints, and iterate. This is how I frame my prompt engineering, and it has saved me a lot of trouble and headaches, as I mentioned, because sometimes if you don't give it the precise context, output, and constraints, you will have an over-engineered product with a lot of bugs. It's important to know what output you're looking for. It's important to know what is it that you don't want the AI to do, right? And it's also important to just give it that knowledge base, that context, right? That persona development is, that's something that we briefly we spoke about on Monday, right? What is that persona development that you're building for? And before I get even deeper into this, let me. Okay, this actually call is being recorded. All right, so never mind. I will not go ahead and record. All good. We are good. So making sure that you provide all these values in your framework is important, because again, you don't want to over-engineer your build. You want to make sure that your build has the right output, the right constraints, and that you're able to iterate, right? When you're building, it's not a one and done approach. You have to iterate. You have to continuously improve your build by continuously inputting that feedback into that feedback loop, in which we spoke about in our earlier classes, right? So now this is all ties together, right? It's kind of like now putting the bow to your build, right? Or to your prompt, I should say. So the context is important because you're setting the scene. You're setting the scene, and you're also setting the user reality of what needs to be done, right? And really putting it into perspective for the AI to understand, like, what is this thing that you're trying to build, right? So the context is set the scene and the user reality. Now the output, you define exactly what you want, what exactly success look like. And we're going to go through some examples. But what exactly does success look like when you are inputting X, Y, and Z prompt to get X, Y, and Z, right? It's important to understand what exactly you want out of this, right? Like, what's the goal? Because AI is smart, but you have to navigate those waters and you have to steer AI to really get exactly that output that you really want. It's important to do so, because if not, again, you'll get an over-engineered product that could be filled with bugs, and it's a hassle. You don't want to do that, right? Constraints, right? What are these boundaries that you want, right? What are the boundaries and limitations that you don't want AI to kind of go further ahead, right? Like, do you want an API? Do you not want an API? Let it know. Let it be known. What are these constraints? What are these boundaries that you're setting? Because again, you want to make sure that the constraints are something that helps you out with the output as well, right? Because if you don't tell the AI, or if you don't tell Modu, like, hey, I don't want, OpenAI API or Lens protocol, then these are boundaries that you're setting, right? And for example, I'm rebuilding Coinplexity, and I entered my prompt, my build, and I also had to remember I had to put constraints, because Modu went ahead and provided me like 4 extra APIs, and I said, hold on, let me kind of reel it back a little bit. Let me add these constraints so Modu knows that, hey, these are the only APIs I really want to work with, and that is XAI, Exasearch, adjacent news, and OpenAI. Like, these are the only 4 APIs I really want to work with. So they understood those boundaries and understood my limitations, and it understood it. And then at that point, I was able to refine it and build it, right? And then iterate, refine based on results, right? So those results is really based on your user feedback. What are users saying? Are they having issues? Are they not having issues, right? Like, what does that result look like? So you can now go back into this loop and providing a context as to what are the user reality, right? So the scenario of like, hey, users are stuck in this one phase of this feature, and then define exactly the output that you want for your users, right? And then it kind of goes into that loop again, right? So now why this works is because ideally this mirrors how humans naturally think about problems while giving it to AI, right? I think in any situation when we're trying to solve something, and I know for me, like when I ask questions, I say, hey, before you even go into details, provide me the context, paint the picture for me. Okay, now what does success look like now that you painted the picture? What are our boundaries, right? What exactly are our limitations here? And then executing on that, and then getting that feedback, having like a post-mortem meeting or whatever, and then kind of doing the whole spiel again, right? That's how my mind works. So if my mind works this way, why not put that into a framework where AI is able to understand this framework when you're inputting your prompt, right? Because now you're giving structure to AI and exactly what needs to be delivered precisely. I think too often I see a lot of builders just put prompts and then let AI kind of just build. That's cool, but if you want exactly precise output as far as like what you want in your vision, it needs to be a framework. It needs to be combined in a bundle of reality, of success, and what you want that outcome to be, because that's very important. And it's also important because you also don't want to be running through your credits, right? I think one of the other things is that when I first started vibe coding, I was blowing through credits because I did not know what I was doing. And then once I got into that PM role and like kind of just put my PM hat on and understood like just prompt engineering and just understood a lot of the nuances on how to build, that's what led me to now understand that, all right, like I need a framework, because this framework is going to save me time and credits. So definitely take this into consideration when you're building. Now, to be fair, prompting, in my opinion, especially with vibe coding, it's an art, right? So if you have your own sauce on how to do this, cool, right? This is just my sauce on how I'm able to build builds without having to have a headache. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how I structure it, and it has been super productive for me. So if you have your own recipe, add this into your flair. But if you don't, then use this because this will work. All right. So today's goal is really to just master each component. So when you prompt with any connection on Ohara, it works, right? You're not just building blindly, but you're building with direction. So, context, setting the stage, right? The why, the who, right? Who is behind the request of these like elements that you're trying to build, right? And this ties into our Monday class, user persona. Who is this for, right? What is the situation? What is happening? Why is there urgent need for this versus just like are they just casually browsing, right? You need to paint the picture when you're providing context in setting the tone when you're about to talk to Modu. I think it's super important because the more context you provide, the more Modu understands your vision, right? The environment, right? How they will use this. Is it mobile? Would it be desktop? Yesterday I was building Complexity and Modu went ahead and built it in a web app. But again, I should have known. I should have told it, hey, do this mobile first, right? So set the stage, right? I think I got comfortable knowing that, all right, I already did this first build already. And I got comfortable with just like my vision. And I kind of just wanted to get it up and started, that I needed to go back to my roots again. So the build is done. It's just more or less like, all right, I got to tap into my roots again and start using the framework so Modu understands. Because when I first did this project, I didn't have Modu. It was just me, myself, and I, and a little bit of Chat GPT. So Modu brings a little bit more of a nuance but flavor to your building, because it's able to understand structure, is able to understand your connections that you're trying to use, like the API connections, and it's also trying to understand like what is this environment you're trying to build upon, right? So you also don't want Modu to assume that it's going to be on desktop only, right? Ideally, you always want to think mobile first. And then what is the user feeling? Are they excited? Are they frustrated? What is that problem that you're trying to solve? Does it come with excitement? Does it come with a problem? Does it come with confidence? Like, what is that, right? What is that emotional state? Because I think that's also important in kind of painting a picture as to what outcomes you want the users to have. So context is important when you're building your prompt. So an example of this is, and this is just the kind of just like high level of an example, but this is the first one is a weak transformation, right? Create an image from an app, right? We all can say that this is like very vague, right? But when you add context, you can say create an image for overwhelmed parents who need to quickly understand a complex childcare scheduling app while multitasking on mobile, right? You can put this into Modu and it'll create you an image. And if you haven't played around with it, I think it's really cool. Play around with it. The way it creates images is nuts. Also videos, super amazing too. Good job of the Ohara team and being able to use those APIs and features on there. But you see how I painted the picture? I stated who is it for, what needs to be done, what are the outcomes, what is the setting, right? So I provided all of this in a very short sentence. And that's the context you want to start putting into your prompts when you're building. Doesn't have to be this precise, but it needs to be something around this realm so Modu understands. And these are just like more in-depth, like context examples across different connections. So for example, there's Flux. So for Flux, you can say something around this realm of creating onboarding graphics for a crypto trading app aimed at Gen Z users who are intimidated by traditional finance interfaces. They're viewing this on mobile, likely feeling nervous about making their first trade and need reassurance that the apps is trustworthy but not stuffy, right? So again, this is just the context, right? What is it, right? Who's it about? What's the problem? What's the user persona, right? So when we spoke about on Monday, the user persona, that's really for you to understand like who you're building for. This is how now you apply it into practice when you're framing your prompt. So here's the context, right? This is like that first step of like, what are you trying to do? Okay. Who are you doing this for? Why are you doing this for? And what is that feeling that is making this, have with like a sense of urgency in trying to build this build, right? Are you trying to have fun? Are you trying to solve a problem? Like, what is that, right? So context is super important for the first phase of your prompt. Next is the output. Defining what success is precisely will work wonders. And I think everybody knows this. When you're able to put that output of like what exactly you want, like the end result into your framework, into your prompt, you know your prompt is fire. Like you know your prompt is not trash, right? You want to have like this defined success precisely. Like because if you have the output will be the exact end result of what you want, right? So the way I pretty much bundle this into a framework is the format, right? So what exactly do we want? What is the structure, right? What is the structure of the outcome, right? Are there specific file types, dimensions, like sizing, right? The duration. What's the structure looks like, right? What exactly is it that we're working with here? The content. And when I say content, like what is the information or element that has to be included into this output? And what is a user action, right? What is what should the user do next with this output? Like what exactly is going to define them to now go on to that next phase of their user journey? And that user journey could be different for everybody, right? So for example, it could be as simply as an onboarding page, right? This onboarding page, what should they do with this next now? Should they now go onto their home dashboard? Should they go to the home page, right? It's really deciding like, okay, this should be the user action next, right? So you also have to put yourself into the user shoes and think about, as I mentioned in on Monday's class, the user journey, user mapping. It is super important to put this into your prompt framework because that's what's going to tailor now your next prompt, right? Everything is a story. Everything weaves in and out into your next prompt. And I think that's important whenever you're building out your prompts. It has to weave in some way somehow because if not, it you will get bugs. Okay, you will get bugs, and I learned that the hard way. And then just like the success metrics, right? Like how will you know it worked, right? So that comes with testing, understanding your user pain points, understanding user flow, and understanding the outcome, right? So if the outcome is not what you really deem it to be, then maybe there's some iteration that you need to do now back into that loop. Okay. So output, you're defining the success in that prompt now. Like what should they do? So now what's an example of this, right? So an example of this is a wallet connection button that feels familiar to Web2 users, shows connection status clearly, handles errors gracefully with helpful messages, works on all screen sizes, and reduces users' anxiety about connecting their wallet for the first time. I like to put emotions because for some strange reason, AI tends to understand that more than just saying, hey, just build me this, build me that. I think it adds a little bit more flavor and actually, I don't know, and maybe this is just me and, and how successful I've been with all my builds, but adding that emotional element to AI, it really makes a differentiator on the type of builds you build. Because it creates really smooth user flow, user interactions that I've noticed, versus just being like stone cold, just like, hey, no pun intended with the Austin 316 shirt, but instead of just being like real bare and like flavorless and say, hey, build me this app that connects to Web2 users and that's that, like it will do it, but like I just feel like sometimes that user flow it's just missing for me, right? And adding that emotional element just adds that extra flavor when you're prompting. So this would be an example of the output, right? This is what you want the users to do when they are connecting to a wallet, right? That's the output, right? So constraints. Constraints are the power of boundaries and telling AI what you can do and what you cannot do. And this is important because sometimes AI will have a way of its own and thinking that what they think is perfect. And sometimes it is up to us to steer that boat and say, hey, no, it's not. You're over engineering. Let's reel it in a little bit back. All right. So The constraints could be technical, right? It could be file sizes, it could be load times, device compatibility, API limits, right? And that's important because we are working with a lot of APIs here. The business, the nature of it, right? What's the timeline? Are there any brand guidelines, right? When you're building your build, you know, do you want it to just be pink or do you not want it to be pink? Right? You have to add these like guidelines so it knows that hey, I should not put pink in this brand, right? I should not put yellow in this brand, and it should solely be black and white, right? When I do my UX UI, I'm very precise as to how I do my builds. If you go on my builds, they're very precise on how I do it. It's not scattered, it's intentional. And that's because I put constraints. I let it know the power of what you can do and what you cannot do. Once you implement that in your prompt framework, AI tends to understand better and it doesn't over engineer your build. And then users, right? Do they have device limitations? Do they need accessibility needs, right? Making sure that those constraints are all embedded into your prompt, because you don't want to go at the very end of your build and now you're in a testing mode and then now you have to say, hey, add this one extra feature, right? Or remove this feature, because that one feature that you're removing at the end of your build could literally just break your whole build, right? As I mentioned, your prompt has to weave in with your next prompt. It's building blocks, right? The better you get at building the blocks, the better it is at, when you're debugging. And that's something that we're going to go over on Friday. If you're trying to add and debug and your prompts don't have like that user mapping where it flows, you could break your build. And that's the last thing I want you to go through, is breaking your build. Making sure that all the prompts that you're building with this framework weaves in one to the other. Think about this like just weaving in and just like crocheting, right? Crocheting, it's just like that, right? It's parts where it needs to be woven in and it needs to stick together, right? Because one thread that you pull, everything can fall apart. So think of it in that way. You're literally threading your prompts to build your build. So why does constraints matter though? I'm a firm believer that, again, if you tell AI what to do precisely, it will save you from over engineering. It keeps you focused. And when I say it keeps you focused, it keeps you accountable on the tech stack that you're trying to use, especially on Ohara, because you have so many things to play with. It's like it's a playground of like APIs, a playground of all these like rich features that you have at your disposal. And you can get caught up in the fact of like, yeah, I want to add like 7 APIs and I want to add Flux and I want to add 11 labs and I want to add this, right? Like you can literally get caught up in all of that. And then the moment you start building, it breaks. You want to make sure you add those constraints. So one, Modu knows, and then also for you to know that, hey, let me not add this. Maybe this is not important to add Lens protocol API or the talent protocol API, right? Like yesterday, I was like, oh, it'd probably be cool to like add the talent protocol. But I already told Modu, hey, just focus on these 4 APIs: OpenAI, XAI, adjacent search, and perplexity, right? I already told Modu like, hey, just focus on those 4 APIs. And then in my head, I'm like, oh, maybe it'd be dope to have like a builder's, like search. No, it's not important. It's not important. You already told Modu what it was, right? These are the 4 main APIs. Why go back and potentially break your build? So that's why it's important. Add those constraints so not only AI knows, but then you are also aware of what your constraints are as well. So an example output of this constraint would be must load in under 3 seconds on 3G connection. Now, doesn't have to really be 3G connection per se, but hypothetical. Must load in under 3 seconds on 3G connection, work without JavaScript enabled, comply with GDPR, cost under 10 cents per user interaction, and be understandable by someone with zero crypto knowledge, right? So that's just like a high level example. And the reason why I used this was because I was using I was vibe coding on another Web 2 vibe coding platform, but for Ohara, it would probably look a little bit different. So just take that into consideration. So I want to now put it all together now, so you guys can really understand and see what it looks like in action, right? So the V1, and this is probably how everybody starts, is create a crypto pricing tracking app, right? Everybody's familiar with this, like V1 basic. Let me just start with this, right? The V2 is when you apply context, right? Create a crypto price tracking app for busy professionals who check prices during coffee breaks and need to make quick decisions about their small portfolios, right? Now, let's add the output. Create a mobile first crypto price tracker showing BTC, ETH, SOL with clear plus and minus indicators. So that's the output now that is adding 24-hour changes, portfolio value, and 3 tap trade execution for busy professionals checking during coffee breaks, right? So now let's add the constraints. Create a mobile first crypto price tracker, loads in less than 3 seconds, works offline. The maximum is 3 coins, no complex charts, showing portfolio value in 1 tap trade alerts for busy professionals with less than 5K portfolio who check during coffee breaks, right? So now you're adding all these constraints as to like, okay, what exactly does AI needs to show when you're building these builds? Because it also needs to understand, like, should I show everything? Should I not show everything, right? It's important. And I think adding these constraints will also not make your app so complex, if that makes sense, right? Because if you just not like include constraints, you're going to have a very complex app, and then for you to debug your own app and not really understand what the constraints are, it's going to be really difficult and it's going to be a headache. And then last but not least, iterating based on testing, right? And that goes from taking that feedback. So what does that look like in real time? Create a mobile first crypto price tracker with large fonts, 40 plus users, vibration alerts, commuter friendly, simplify plus and minus colors, maybe colorblind accessible, emergency sell button, and then for busy professionals managing small portfolios during brief daily check-ins, right? So that's like the feedback that it took, right? So this is how your evolution of prompting should look like. Your V4 is the one that you want to go ahead and tie in with the context and the outputs and all the everything else, right? That's the one you want to enter. That's the one that you want to go with when you're prompting and you're telling Modu what to do. V5 is just more or less based on the feedback that you're getting from your community members and so forth. So context, output, constraints, iterate. Super important when you're building out your prompts. Make it a habit. Work on adding that flavor, that context, right? That's where like that's where like really that muscle memory comes into place, and like just like continuously doing it again and again and again. Because too often we tend to, and even for me, I'm gonna be honest with you, I went through a period, and I want to say this was in June. I went through a period where like I just hated, like it was just like hated prompting. Like I think I was just so burnt out with so many builds that I have built between like on Ohara and other Web 2 platforms. Like I was burnt out. I was super burnt out. I was just like, all right, build me a tracking app. You know what I'm saying? And I started to get frustrated because I knew that wasn't enough, and I knew that I needed to go back to my roots of like adding that context, adding that output specification, including those constraints, because that's what avoids the headache. But it takes work. It takes time. So put this into practice starting today, making sure that when you do build, these are things that you're considering at the same time. Because again, this gives you structure. You're not building blindly. You're building with a sense of direction rather than just hoping AI figures it out on its own. There's still a level of critical thinking that needs to be done when you're vibe coding. But the beautiful thing about this is that you have a companion, in this case, Modu, to really help you out build that out. So take advantage of that. Please, please, please take advantage of that. Alrighty. This is just something that I want you guys to like remember. And when I tell my classes all the time, it's something that, not that it takes them back, but like I think too often we give AI too much credit. And in reality, we also have to give ourselves credits because you're the one steering AI. So I want you to remember this. Great prompt engineering isn't about being clever with AI, right? It's not about being like super, super smart with AI. It's really deeply about understanding your users and your systems and solving their problems. And this just goes to building apps. Anything else, it may be different. But when you're vibe coding, really focus on understanding your users, the systems they're using, which is what you're building, and what are their problems. If you can focus on that and then also couple that in with having Modu as your AI companion to help you solve those issues, and then tailor that in with prompt engineering, the framework, the user persona, the persona development, the user stories, the user mapping. If you bundled all that together, you're going to have a very powerful app, an app that makes sense, an app that flows, an app that makes just it is a no-brainer for your app, right? Um, I think too often we think too hard about like, well, if AI is smart, I have to be smart too. In instances like this, when you're building, I don't think so. I think that if you are good with understanding user problems, and if you're good with using your words and frameworks, I think you're golden. I think you're golden. I think sometimes we try to over engineer things and try to reinvent the wheel and try to be smarter than AI and try to go into it in a way where, you know, it's maybe too complex, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it KISS. Um, it's one of the things that has helped me showcase this framework to thousands of people thus far, including you guys now today. So just keep it simple. Just remember your user pain points. Remember who you're doing this for, and just like understand your users. Understand if you're doing this for degens, then understand the degen mentality, because that's important. Understanding, you know, users who are accustomed to different environments, then build for them. But remember, it's not about being clever with AI. It's really just understanding pain points and how you're going to paint that picture for AI. I want to give some time for builders because I know that was a lot, but I want to give some time, at least a good 10 minutes, to really just like put this into practice, and really have time to like play around with your prompts and just build. So I'm going to put on some chill music, probably about 10 to 15 minutes, have you guys just build, and then we'll circle back and then we'll go ahead and close it out. Um, Friday, Friday will be a lot deeper because we're going to be going into like debugging and just a lot of the nuances of what to do when you're debugging and just the framework on how to go about that. So that being said, let's just build a little bit. I'm actually going to be building too and show you guys what I'm building as well, so you guys get inspired. So this is what I've been cooking. I am cooking Coinplexity, and Coinplexity is going to be a research tool specifically for crypto. So you have all your trending analysis, all your alpha, any events that's going on within crypto, understanding sentiment, because that's important. I think one of the biggest things is like, what are people actually saying? I know there's certain other feeds where you can, I guess, see what people are saying, but then it's like on Twitter, you can also ask Grok. I get that, but to have this in a full-fledged suite with OpenAI, Perplexity, XAI, just having this like suite of tools bundled up, I think that's what makes this powerful. So I just asked, what's the social sentiment around DeFi protocols? And as of today, the sentiment around DeFi on is mixed but leans cautiously optimistic. Discussions reflect a blend of enthusiasm for DeFi potential, the positive sentiments, some negative sentiments that it tells you, and this is just all based on X, and then it'll give you the some notable accounts on X as to like what they're saying based on the sentiment of DeFi. So if we put here alpha and let's say I put what is I'll put the ticker sign, what is Toby, right? And click search and it will search. Now, one of the things that I have to figure out is one of the constraints is the load up time on this. Now, granted, I know it's using an API, and then from the API is going into another API for like the output and analysis based on the data that XAI provides. And maybe I need to fix that flow a little bit better so it doesn't take too much of a load time. So here it no, did it show up or not? Let's see. It did not show up. So maybe that's something I need to fix. Let me see something. And then I'll show you guys this feature. So this feature is solely the XAI feature where it's able to scrape just like sentiment or analysis based on Twitter. And then there's another one where I use Perplexity to do research. Let's see. And then the cool thing about this, here it is. Okay. I'm like, why does it? Okay. Oh, okay. I see what happened. Okay. I got to fix that flow. So I put what is Toby. And then like it just gives you all the context of like what is Toby based on the sentiment on X. Toby is often associated base toe god, narrative on base blockchain, right? Like it scrapes everything for you. And then it pulls up some of the sources on here. And then if you go to research, let's say if you want to learn a little bit more about like the Genius Act, right? So what is the Genius Act? I'll go ahead and research your question and you get anything related to crypto. So think of this as like your intelligence hub of things. The Genius Act is a landmark law passed in July 2025 that establishes the first comprehensive federal regulatory framework for stable coins, digital currencies designed to maintain a stable value backed by one. So it gives you the resources. You can click on the resources and it takes you there. And then it also curates like crypto intelligence. I also need to work on the load up time. So that's another constraint that I need to work on. So I'm putting this out there for you guys to see that, you know, when you're building, these are some of the things that you have to continuously do. You test, you iterate, you provided the constraints and go from there. Major financial institutions are increasing their crypto holdings, with several hedge funds announcing the inclusion of cryptocurrency into the portfolio. This trend showcases a growing confidence in the market as legitimate assets class, high impact. So it does have a high impact on the market. You know what I'm saying? It does have that big impact. So I also added the prediction markets here. I'm not sure if I'll keep this. I'm not sure like what's the value here just yet. And then the market sentiment. Let's see. Recent posts on X indicate a mix of sentiment with a slight lean towards greed. Yeah, that makes sense. Values mentioned range between neutral around 52 to 58 to greed up to 73 in some posts, with the balance of cautious and bullish outlooks. However, there is no overwhelming consensus reflecting uncertainty and the natural overall sentiment as of the latest discussions. I think that's pretty spot on. I think sometimes a lot of the things that we see on, and I think that the data that CoinMarketCap provides is good, but I think sometimes it's overhyped because sometimes there is a lot of people who overhype things. I think with X, you're able to really scrap real raw emotions on how traders are feeling. And if they're feeling neutral about it, then that's cool. I'm feeling bullish just because like Bitcoin is at what, 121 right now. And I guess it could be neutral too, because like we're also waiting on like the CPI reports, whatever, right? I don't want to get too into it and regarding that, but all that to say is that this is a crypto intelligence platform to make fully aware decisions, and you're able to connect your wallet, you're able to refresh the intelligence, research at your own pace. And I don't know why there's two intelligence feed, but that's something I would need to remove. And then we also have the XAI social intelligence. So you could understand, where is the alpha, where's the meta coming from? Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And then your profile, just based on your intelligence interests, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, DeFi, regulation, GameFi, and so forth. So that's Coinplexity. This is what I'm building. I'm probably going to take my time with this one just because this is a lot different from what I've built the first time around. This looks a lot clean and more, I don't know, this looks more web3-ish, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is Coinplexity. If you guys want to kind of just pick my brain about this, happy to do so. But I hope you guys use this time to just build and kind of put what I just taught you into practice. Because you can literally build anything on Ohara. Like, look what I just built. I literally built the whole crypto intelligence platform. But I feel like this is a lot better than what I did the first time around. So super excited for this one. And that's that, guys. I think this comes to the end of our class today. Yeah, make sure that you guys are going through the recordings. If you need help, I'm at the Discord. Shoot me a holla. I'm on X. DM me. I'm free. I'm happy to help. It's always a pleasure to come on here and just give you guys these nuggets that I've learned along the way. As always, the Vibe Code King himself, Sir Stacks. It's always a pleasure. With that being said, see you guys on Friday. Friday, we'll be talking about debugging. How do we debug our product? I think it's important to also have that framework as well, to have it in your itinerary, and just have you as a full-fledged vibe coder who has all these different skills and ready to ship, because next week, it's all about learning how to validate, distribution, and getting your app out there in front of people. So this week, we're grinding on our apps, because next week we're going to continue grinding on our apps, but now we have to think about like how we're going to distribute them. We also have some special guests next week. Some folks from Base will be coming on, so make sure you guys are in the camp. Sign up if you haven't done so. Come through. This is the place to be, honestly. This is the place to be if you want to build.